Spoiler alert. The following will contain spoilers for Loki.
What's up, everybody? It's me, E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews and Glorious Purpose! That's what this episode 5 of Loki brought with it, and I am telling you, it was fun and entertaining to watch. Now, I will admit, this episode was a little thin on plot, but it was real heavy when it came to the Easter eggs. Matter of fact, it made me think about like when you go to the Olive Garden and you fill up on all them breadsticks and stuff, and you ain't even get to the main meal. Now, before we get started, I know some of you are new to the channel. This might be your very first breakdown. I'm just letting you know right now, I'm not about to go dissecting every single Easter egg in this episode, but I will cover some of them that I think might have bigger implications in the MCU somewhere down the line. In this video, I'm going to be going over more analysis, plot development, characters, and so on. So, since we got a lot of stuff to cover, let's jump right into it. We pick up from Loki being recently pruned and being met by other variants of himself in the background of a large, cloudy with a chance of meatballs monster about to approach. Well, for many of you that have been waiting for some sort of reference to Kang the Conqueror, we just got one in that opening sequence. We've got a huge building here with the word Kang on it, and in the comics, Tony Stark sold this tower to Kang Enterprise. The company was ran by a Mr. Griffin, who happened to be an alter ego of Kang the Conqueror, who became trapped in the 21st century Earth. Now, I've said in many of my previous breakdowns that I do not believe that Kang the Conqueror is actually going to make an appearance into the Loki series. However, this is a nice Easter egg to just let us know that he does actually exist, at least within like the big multiverse. So if anything, we can expect him to show up soon. Back at the TVA, Sylvie is questioning the truth about who started the organization. Ravonna claims that she doesn't know, and she too wants to know who is behind it all. She explains that the pruning process sends people to a place of limbo where the branched realities will stop growing. She then requests for Sylvie to return her temp pad so that she can get the answers that they need. So we finally have some confirmation as to how pruning works. I know many of us were worried about the main Loki, especially how he got pruned in the last episode, because the way the first episode set everything up, it looked like people were just getting deleted forever. While this is kind of true, it wasn't the whole truth, and that right there is what we have to keep in mind. What the TVA has been telling us and what we've seen may not be the full truth about how any of this works. So this is also why I've said in the past videos to always pay attention to Loki's questions and his skepticism. It's the primary way for us not to drink too much of the propaganda Kool-Aid. Now, as for Ravonna, she's sitting here talking about she also wants to know who's behind all of this. I'm just going to say we're going to keep an eye on her because she's looking pretty raggedy right now. Loki is still trying to seek out answers as to what's going on. Kid Loki tells him to shut up or else the monstrous being Alioth will hear them. Brokey informs him that all the branch realities are sent here and devoured by the creature. Loki questions why Kid Loki is the one that's leading the group. Classic Loki tells him to put some respect on the kid's name because this is his kingdom. When Loki questions what the kid's Nexus event was, he tells him that he killed Thor. Loki is shooketh. So now we're actually getting the other side of Ravonna's story. She said that things were sent into limbo, but she didn't supposedly know what happened after that. All she knew was that things didn't come back. With Loki on the other side, we get to fill in those gaps by learning that it's Alioth who devours things, and that is the reason why things don't come back. Speaking of which, I should mention that Alioth is a character that is ripped straight from the comics. Everything we saw here is pretty much exactly what the comics say about it. It's just a living creature that devours all this stuff and grows as it consumes. Now, I really didn't want to get into a deep dive explanation about Alioth because, well, it's kind of confusing with the comics. I mean, dealing with all the time, matter, space, interdimensional, blah, 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 all that stuff. All you need to know is that if Alioth touches you, you will cease to exist. That's it. Now, we do have a nice little Easter egg with Yellow Jacket's helmet. Now, this is interesting because we know he got sent to the microverse in the first Ant-Man movie, and we know that that leads to the quantum realm. We also know that the quantum realm could have some connections with both time travel and the upcoming Ant-Man and the Wasp movie, which will involve Kang the Conqueror. And by the way, did you notice how big that helmet was? Is it normal sized, or is everyone else really, really small? Now, as mentioned earlier, we know that the TVA will prune people or things and send it into limbo, but they don't know what actually happens after that. It's already bad enough that pruning looks like people are getting disintegrated, but do you think the TVA agents would still be falling in line if they knew that all those people that were sent there were being devoured by a huge monster? Whether they know it or not, the TVA are really jacked up for this. As for that reveal with Kid Loki killing Thor, that was definitely something. Now, this could go two ways. Maybe Kid Loki killed him in a fit of rage. I mean, it's not unlike the brothers to fight, or maybe it was unintentional. Maybe he was playing a prank on Thor and it went terribly wrong. What do you think happened? For me, I kind of felt as though when I heard Kid Loki talk about killing Thor, it almost sounded like he had a little bit of regret in his voice. It didn't sound like he took any real pleasure or joy in killing his brother, so maybe that could be something that they're going to build on. And look, we already know that they're going to probably use Kid Loki and put him into the Young Avengers some way, somehow. So hopefully we get a little bit more backstory if he does become a recurring character. At the TVA, Ravonna asks Miss Minutes for access to the files going back to the beginning of time. Sylvie deduces that if the end of time is still being written, then by traveling beyond the void, variants could still be undetectable. The temp pads won't be able to lock on and transport people beyond that point. Miss Minutes suggests the Void spacecraft and starts looking for the file on it. An offer is made between Ravonna and Sylvie to find the person behind the TVA, but Sylvie sniffs out the fact that the two of them were just stalling for time. She tucks the temp pad in her pocket and prunes herself. Just so we're clear, Ravonna and Miss Minutes are playing ashy. Did you see how Miss Minutes fixed her face to tell this bold-faced lie, talking about some void spaceship or whatever? Ma'am, get out of here with your android AI lying self. I'm just saying we cannot trust Ravonna, and Miss Minutes needs to get rebooted or something. Matter of fact, both of them feel like they work for HR. You know how like the HR department come out and act like they on your side, but really, nah, they not. They on the side of the company. Peep game. Now, Sylvie had mentioned that hiding in apocalyptic events hid her from the TVA because she couldn't create a diverging branch. But why did it happen on Lamentus 1? I hope they end up answering this because Mobius did say that whatever that connection was between Loki and Sylvie, that will bring down the TVA. I'm thinking that the reason why Sylvie was able to hide in those apocalyptic events was because it was just her. Even the Pompeii test that Loki and Mobius did, it was only Loki that was there. So in both those cases, you only had one Loki hiding in an apocalyptic event. However, when you have two Lokis in the mix, that might be enough to cause even more Nexus energy. But that's just my working theory. Now, before Sylvie pruned herself, Ravonna had asked her like if she had like any lasting good memories or whatever, and Sylvie only said that she had one. Now I'm wondering, what do you think that memory could be? I'm thinking it could be Loki, or maybe it's her mother in Asgard, or maybe it's something else. What do you think Sylvie's one memory could be? Now, of course, we got to talk about a couple Easter eggs. First one, we have to talk about the Thanos helicopter, and that is just a fun Easter egg back to the classic Thanos of the comics, where he was literally out here flying his own helicopter, name brand and all. Then we have Thor's hammer buried underground with Throg stuck in a jar trying to capture it. I've mentioned this in earlier breakdowns that we would probably get a Throg cameo, and there it is. Now, for those of you that want a backstory on Throg, basically Asgard needed to name a person to follow up Odin as king, and in order to prevent Thor from doing that, Loki turned Thor into a frog. He had all these little adventures as a frog, but, then he lifts his hammer, and then he turns into Frog Thor. Back in Kid Loki's lair, Brokey recounts the time he vanquished Captain America and Iron Man, and collected all 6 of the Infinity Stones. Gator Loki asked, "Why the hell you lying? Why you always lying?" And the two get into a scuffle. Classic Loki recounts how he encountered Thanos, and rather than dying during the events of Infinity War, he faked his own death by casting a projection or an illusion so real that it fooled Thanos. Afterwards, he went into exile, and after a long period of loneliness, he decided to go see his brother Thor. However, that is when the TVA arrived. Let me tell you, classic Loki, the OG Loki, this story is so important. First of all, in case you're new here, I dropped a theory about this very situation about 2 years ago where I talked about how Loki faked his death and cast a real projection of himself to escape his death from Thanos. So as you know, I was too geeked to see this story play out kind of similar, at least to some degree, to my previous theory. Anyway, there is something very important that we have to take away from this story, and that's in relation to our main Loki. And this is going to be something that you have to pay attention to for the entire series. Every single variant serves as a reflection point or learning experience for our main Loki. Every decision or action or mistake that the variants make in their life is a decision our main Loki can avoid or learn from. So there are two vital things to take away in classic Loki's story. First one is that Loki's greatest ability is in his sorcery. Sure, Loki might look real cool with his blades, but his magic is something that can really take Loki to new heights. The second thing to consider is the factor of loneliness. He grew lonely and wanted to see his brother Thor again, and it was at that exact moment when the TVA stepped in. Why? Because old man Loki didn't follow the Loki script. While it might be true that Lokis do survive, according to the script of the sacred timeline, Lokis are supposed to die alone. They're not supposed to love other people. Just think about what Sif and Mobius were telling Loki in the previous episodes. If a Loki stops feeling or being lonely, then bam, Nexus event, in comes the TVA. So what does this mean for our main Loki? Well, I think it's a lesson for him to know that being in exile isn't obviously a good idea. So in the future, our main Loki may opt for making more friends and not being lonely. Maybe he'll be inspired to use more of his magic. Maybe he'll be inspired to hang out more with Thor. Sylvie wakes up in a school bus as Alioth is about to devour her. She runs for it and is met by a pizza delivery car driven by Mobius. They hightail it out of there and get to safety. Back at the bunker, Loki decides that he's going to kill Alioth. All the Lokis give a hearty laugh at this stupid plan. Loki sets off to enact his plan, but he's met with even more Lokis looking down on him. Turns out that Brokey has betrayed the group in exchange for taking the throne and the Loki army. Then, the Loki army turn on President Loki. Gator Loki felt like the election was rigged, so he kicked off the insurrection and bit President Loki's hand. All the variants started fighting against one another. Classic Loki opens up a portal and teleports the group back to safety. Loki convinces the group that they need Sylvie to defeat Alioth, and they agree to help him. Alright, so first and foremost, y'all already know I am super happy that my man Mobius is alive and well. It sucks that the internet or TV spots were so thirsty to ruin it with screenshots and footage, but whatever. We got Mobius back, and that's all that matters. Anyway, that quick glimpse of what Sylvie saw was quite interesting, but we'll get into that later. As for that Loki battle, y'all already know my man Brokey done let me all the way down. Y'all knew I was excited for a brother named Loki. Come on now, I was with it. And he had to be the first one to betray everybody? Man, I tell you, it be your own people. Now, I know some people didn't care for this Loki on Loki violence, but it actually was very important. As I said before, every single variant we see in this show is for the main Loki's benefit. You can kind of think of this experience as like a group therapy session for our Loki. He just saw all these possibilities of himself and realized that deep down, he's so conniving that he would even betray himself. And that is really messed up to know that you can't even trust yourself in that capacity. So while the fight and everything was certainly entertaining, and I have to say I was cracking up when Gator Loki took a bite out of that hand, despite the entertainment, it's still again a learning experience for Loki. Maybe this will demonstrate to Loki the importance of being trustworthy, or maybe it'll cause yet another change from him from within. By the way, did you see the OG Loki out there putting his powers on display? I need you to check this out. Did you notice that he cast projections and they were fighting? Our main Loki hasn't been able to do that, at least not to my knowledge. Usually, if you touch one of Loki's projections, they disappear. But these projections were tangible and able to take people out. And then on top of that, this man made a portal and teleported. He doesn't even need the Tesseract to get around. And all I'm saying is, if this is just a hint at the potential of what Loki's power could be, the sky is the limit. Something else I want you to pay attention to is what both old and kid Loki say after leaving the fight. He mocks the version of Loki's in their pursuit of power and glorious purpose, and says that they're all broken forever. Then Kid Loki says that whenever one of them tries to change, then that's when they are sent to limbo to die. And this yet again challenges another ongoing theme in this show, which is whether or not Loki has any agency in changing who he is or who he wants to be. According to the TVA, they are acting like everything is predestined, which in a sense is erasing the free will of all these beings. If you try to do or be something different, then bam, you're pruned. However, now Loki is being exposed to those variants which show him all the possible choices and routes in life, and now he could be in a position to exercise his own free will by the time this show ends. And I really like the fact that they demonstrated that, because I think that this show is a little bit deeper, even though they try and play it off with all that entertaining stupidity with all these Lokis fighting themselves. Sylvie and Mobius talk in the car about their past. Mobius apologizes for hunting Sylvie and accepts that he thought he was being one of the good guys. She decides that the best course of action is to actually go back to Alioth and confront the monster. Meanwhile, the group of Lokis see Alioth swallow a Navy ship vessel. They meet up with Sylvie and Mobius and discuss her plan to enchant Alioth. Now, I really appreciated this scene with Mobius and Sylvie because, Mobius, he's like humble enough to acknowledge his mistakes and actually apologize for them, unlike some ashy folks out there in the TVA. Matter of fact, let's get on to them. In the TVA, Renslayer has Hunter B-15 locked up. Ravonna said that B-15 was being disloyal to the TVA, but B-15 is like, who? Disloyal to what? Where? And she calls out the fact that the timekeepers were obviously fake. She said that the people need to know the truth, but Renslayer objects and says that the people need stability within the TVA. Once that's done, then they can find out who's actually running things. B-15 points out the difference between Renslayer and Sylvie by saying that while Renslayer might want to discover the truth, Sylvie needs it. Feeling salty, Renslayer leaves out and asks Miss Minutes for all the files on the TVA from the beginning of time. Now y'all know, I love me some Gugu, but I got one question, ma'am. What are those? If she don't get out of here with them Air TVA 6s, those Prune 11s, those limited edition time twisters, them all black I want me gold 7s, them retro Lucky Charms. Okay, now I'll admit, earlier on in this episode, I had a lot of mixed feelings and maybe a misunderstanding of what actually was going on with Ravonna and her motivations. She saw the timekeepers get beheaded. She claimed that she wanted to know who was behind it all and get to the truth. Now, most people would just think that, hey, the most common sense thing to do would be to just join up with Loki and Sylvie, maybe even B-15, maybe even Mobius, and get to the bottom of it all together. However, I think now it's a little bit more clear as to what's actually driving her. She does still believe in the TVA. That's why she said it needs stability. She doesn't actually know who's behind it all, but she does see value in the work that they are doing. In other words, she's still drunk on the Kool-Aid and propaganda, but not enough to become a non-believer. See, many people can probably compare the TVA to almost like an organized religion or even a religious crusade. Some believers of a religion might turn their backs or change their mind when they're presented with a challenge to their beliefs. Then on the other hand, you might have other believers who might want to seek out the deeper truth rather than giving it all up. And I think that's what's happening with Renslayer here. Her last words in this scene were about whoever created the TVA may be in danger, meaning she still has a vested interest in protecting that person along with the TVA at large. Now, I do hope in the next episode we might get maybe a little bit more backstory with Renslayer, because I think that there's a little bit more to her story that could add to why she's acting the way she is. And if not, I do have a theory about it, and I'll get that to you guys at another point. Back in Limbo, Mobius and the Lokis are chatting along the fire. Sylvie and Loki are sitting outside, and he conjures her up a magical blanket for them to share. She asks him how she knows that he won't betray her in their final moments. He looked her deep in her eyes and said, "Baby girl, I'd never do you like that." Now, just a quick thing to take notice here in this scene. Old Loki asked Mobius about turning his back on the one thing he devoted his entire life to, and Mobius had said it's never too late to change. In that very moment, that is where old Loki gets the inspiration for his future actions. Now hold up. I know y'all peep game, right? Loki out here talking about he cold. Bro, you a whole frost giant. Get out of here, man. Talking about you cold. You ain't cold. You cold-blooded. I see you, player. I see you. Now, that was just a very cute little moment between the two. I like the fact that even Sylvie showed a little vulnerability here, too. She asked Loki if he would betray her in the end, and that could be a little foreshadowing of something in the final episode. We just saw all those other Lokis betray one another, so could it happen again? So, do y'all think that Loki's gonna betray Sylvie? Or maybe will Sylvie betray Loki? Let me know what you think in the comments. All the Lokis stare off at Alioth in the distance. Sylvie takes out the temp pad and gives it to Loki, but he gives it back to say that he's gonna stay and fight with her. So he gives the temp pad to Mobius for him to return to the TVA. Mobius offered the other Lokis a way back, but they declined and opted to stay in Limbo as well. Kid Loki gives Loki a golden short sword. Mobius says that he's going to burn the TVA to the ground. He and Loki hug, and Loki tells him, "Thank you, my friend." You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. Woo! But that was all I could think of when I saw that moment. That moment was so touching. Come on, man. You know you have to feel a little something for Loki, because you know Loki ain't got no friends. You know Loki ain't got not a single friend out there. Even his brother barely want to be his friend. They love him, but they don't want to be his friend. But I love this because, you know, according to the Loki script, Loki's supposed to be lonely. He's not supposed to care about other people and have friends and stuff, but he got a friend now with Mobius. So I like the fact that we're already seeing some growth within his character. Loki and Sylvie head off to face Alioth. Needing a distraction, Loki draws out the blade and sets it aflame. Alioth doesn't fall for the bait and heads straight back for Sylvie. However, before she's devoured, classic Loki recreates a massive illusion of Asgard. Alioth destroys the illusion and then follows up by consuming classic Loki as well. Before the monster could attack Sylvie and Loki, their magical bond works and the beast falls under the spell of enchantment. A path is cleared for them, revealing a huge mansion in the distance. With Alioth defeated, Sylvie and Loki are now off to meet the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. Wow, 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 wow. Shout out to classic OG old man Loki. He did that. That was truly a glorious purpose at its finest. Shout out to Richard E. Grant for killing this role. I absolutely loved him here, and he definitely stole the show. I love this moment so much. Did you peep the thunder and lightning? I think that was a nice little homage to his brother Thor. Plus, I thought it was interesting that he would pick an illusion of Asgard to cast. He more than likely missed his home, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm not mistaken, in Norse mythology, Loki is the key to setting off Ragnarok. But at the same time, while he might bring destruction, he's also key in bringing about rebirth as well. So this could be a nice way to just kind of show that cycle through the character. Hey, Loki and Sylvie have enchanted the monster, and now they're on the way to this big mansion to see who's been pulling the strings all this time. And I mean, can we just get this out of the way right now? It's clearly Mephisto, right? Okay, I'm just playing. Hey, stop. Hey, stay on this. Don't click off this video. I was just playing. But let's go over all the many possibilities of who could actually be running the show. Now, I've heard some really interesting theories out there. Some people have thought that maybe it's a variant of Mobius, or even better, a variant of Loki. Now, maybe this could be the superior Loki variant who's achieved all the power that he's ever wanted. While I really do like this theory, I get the feeling that it would be a little bit too repetitive for Marvel to make that the final boss. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, I just think it's a little too predictable given the fact that we already have so many Loki variants. Now, some people have also thought that it could be Kang the Conqueror. While that also is not impossible, I'm not going to bank on it, mainly because, as I've said many times before, the Disney Plus shows don't rely on giving major villains to these characters. Despite how popular you might think Loki is, he's still a supporting character. And by supporting, I'm saying relative and compared to the cinematic movie characters. A lead character in a Disney Plus show is not the same as a lead in a big-time Marvel movie. So with that, they're going to give the Disney Plus characters villains that are on their level. This is why I think Marvel is going to play on the theme that they've been driving at from the start of this entire series, which is that they're going to put a variant in there, and I think it's going to be the variant of Kang the Conqueror. Keep in mind that it's been announced very early on that Jonathan Majors was signed on to Marvel and that he was going to be Kang the Conqueror, but that was going to be in the upcoming Ant-Man and the Wasp movie. Also, in the comics, Kang the Conqueror has many different variations of himself throughout the timelines and the universe. He has Nathaniel Richards, Rama Tut, Mr. Griffin, and also Immortus. Matter of fact, I believe that Immortus would be the one that we're going to see in episode 6 of Loki. Now, that version of Kang has a lot of connections to the city of Chronopolis because he ruled it in the comics, and it does have a connection to the quantum realm. Which, by the way, a lot of people theorize that within the quantum realm, that's actually where the TVA is located. And of course, you can check out my theory video for a little bit more on that. So I'm leaning with a Kang variant as being the big bad at the very end, mainly because I think it makes for a good enemy for Loki, because he could technically kill the variant, and he could bring the TVA down. However, at the same time, it would let us, the audience, know that Kang obviously exists, and with no TVA to protect the timeline, Loki could actually bring about the destruction of the multiverse. You know, playing into his whole Norse mythology theme of bringing destruction and rebirth. And one other thing to consider, this would make a really good marketing ploy for Marvel if the final episode they drop has a huge cameo with Jonathan Majors. That right there is a marketing team's dream, with all the future headlines taking over on that Wednesday. But hey, that's just my take on it. What do you think? Because there are clearly many possibilities that Marvel could go with this in the final episode. Well, that's it for episode 5. What did you think about it? What were some of your favorite parts? Better yet, I got a better question for you. Who was your favorite Loki? Was it Kid Loki, Alligator Loki, Classic Loki? Let me know in the comments below. Of course, by the way, I'd also be interested in knowing, how did you rate this episode on a scale from 1 to 10? Are you excited for this final episode 6 that's coming up? They have got a lot to tie up. We better get a lot of answers for this. I'm just saying, this last episode better tie a lot of stuff up. So y'all let me know what you think is going to happen in the next episode, or at least what you're looking for. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my entire video. I really, really do appreciate it. Don't forget that every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific time, that's 8 p.m. Eastern time, we are going to do our final Loki video reaction. It is where we talk about spoilers. It is a live discussion where you and me interact about whatever happens in the final episode of Loki. Y'all, it is going down. It is going to be nuts. I already know it. If you've been to any one of these lives, or even if you've watched the replays, you know we have a good time. You don't want to miss it. Please join me. And of course, if you're new here and you like what you see, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss out the next time I drop a video. And by all means, check out some of my other videos too while you're here. Anyway, I got more videos and reviews that I got to get working on for you all. And until next time, I'll see you all later.